If you run a healthcare practice, especially something specialized like PT, OT, or SLP, your focus is, and it should be, on patient care.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Clinical outcomes.
Right. But there's this single administrative gatekeeper that dictates whether any of that great care actually turns into revenue. And that is provider credentialing.
It sounds like the most boring topic you could possibly imagine, and yet it is the absolute foundation for getting paid.
It-
Fail the credentialing process, and you just don't bill. It's really that simple.
Exactly. And the sources we've gone through today, guides for clinic owners, industry white papers, compliance checklists, they all make it crystal clear. This whole process has just ballooned in complexity over the last decade.
Oh, massive.
We're talking stricter payer requirements, more bureaucratic layers, and these timelines that just feel like they're designed to create friction in your revenue cycle.
And that's really the driver, that the growth and complexity is why you see the rise of these specialized credentialing vendors or CVOs. They exist because trying to manage this in-house has become, well, nearly impossible for a busy practice.
So that is our deep dive mission today. We're giving you the essential shortcut. We're going to decode what credentialing actually is, what data you absolutely must have ready, and how these CVOs can turn a potential 6-month bureaucratic nightmare into a functioning system. So let's just start with the core definition. Credentialing is the formal process that hospitals and payers use to verify that a provider has all the proper qualifications, licensure, and training.
And we have to start with why this matters. Beyond just simple business logistics, this is not optional.
No.
It's mandated by major accreditation bodies and, most importantly, by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS. If you can't bill CMS, so Medicare, Medicaid, you basically can't operate in most of the U.S. healthcare market.
So credentialing is the ticket to entry.
It's the absolute ticket to entry.
And since Medicare is sort of the foundation for so much of reimbursement today, if you fail to get that CMS approval, your practice is, it's financially crippled before you even start.
That's the why. So now for the how. How does a clinic, which is often short on admin staff, handle this huge compliance-heavy task? And that brings us right back to the CVO.
The Credentialing Verification Organization.
Exactly.
So for anyone who's not familiar, what is their specific value proposition, especially when it comes to time? Because that time factor, I think, is the real aha moment for a practice owner.
It absolutely is. This is where the cost of trying to do it yourself becomes really, really apparent.
Yeah.
If a new clinic tries to handle the whole thing manually, with mail, phone calls, paper forms, the full cycle can take anywhere from 2 months up to 6 months.
6 months?
6 months. Think about that. That's a half a year of a fully staffed, fully functional clinic just waiting to submit its first bill.
That is just a staggering amount of lost revenue potential. The opportunity cost alone is huge.
Precisely. And a vendor's value is immediate. They have these established digital workflows, they have relationships with payers, automated checks, and they can drastically reduce that time and, crucially, catch errors early. That prevents that catastrophic 6-month delay.
Okay, so let's jump into that initial hurdle. Before any vendor can even get started, the clinic has to assemble what our sources call, and I love this phrase, the paperwork mountain.
It is a very accurate description. The first massive step is data gathering. You're preparing every single piece of provider information.
So you're building a file?
You are building a detailed credentialing file that, by the time you're done, can have 20 to 30 unique documents per provider.
Wow, 20 to 30 items. That's a lot for even a new hire packet. So for our listeners, what are the absolute non-negotiable documents that have to be pristine and ready to go?
Okay, so start with the professional qualifications. So copies of all state licenses, current and past, all your board certifications, official degree transcripts, and a detailed practice history. Then you've got the risk management layer. So solid proof of current liability and malpractice insurance. And on the admin side, you need those unique identifiers. The provider's individual national provider identifier, or NPI, and the clinic's tax ID number, the EIN.
And what else?
Malpractice history reports and verifiable professional references. That pretty much completes the core file.
It sounds like a super detailed resume that's backed up by a full criminal and financial history check.
Functionally, that is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And, for listeners running physical, occupational, or speech therapy practices, there's a really important nuance the source material brings up.
Which is?
You need specialty focus. A generic guide just won't cut it. PT, OT, and SLP clinics often need a customized enrollment guide to make sure all those specific therapy licenses and, this is critical, The supervisor documentation is collected correctly from day one.
So it's not just the number of documents, it's making sure you have the right version of the right document for your specific specialty.
Absolutely. And here's a little operational tip that can cut down on delays. Consolidate everything. Put it all into one comprehensive packet for each payer.
Why is that so important?
Payers hate hunting for documents. Every single time they have to call you for a missing signature or an updated license, your clock just resets to zero.
Okay, so we've established the enormous amount of data needed, but just compiling it is only half the battle, right? How do payers even know all the paperwork is legitimate?
That brings us to step 2, verification. And this is really the heart of what a CVO does.
Primary source verification.
Exactly. Primary source verification. The CVO operates under very strict standards. They can't just trust a photocopy that the applicant gives them. They have to query these authoritative primary databases directly.
It's like a really meticulous third-party background check.
That's a great way to put it.
So what are they querying? Where do they go?
They go straight to the source. They'll query state medical or therapy boards to verify a license is current. They contact universities for official transcripts. And critically, they query databases like the National Practitioner Data Bank, the NPDB.
And what's in the NPDB?
It contains all the confidential information about medical malpractice payments, any adverse actions taken against a provider's license. It is the definitive risk assessment tool for payers.
So the CVO is basically doing the deep compliance dive that a clinic owner just doesn't have the time or even the authority to do themselves.
Correct. And what's so valuable here, and a massive time saver, is that because the CVO does these checks every day, they immediately flag common mistakes.
Like what?
Oh, licenses that expired last week, a discrepancy between the application and the NPDB record, or just simple things like missing dates or signatures. Catching that one small mistake in 2 days instead of waiting for a payer rejection 2 months down the line, that is the definition of accelerated revenue.
That makes perfect sense. But I have to ask, doesn't relying on an outsourced CVO create its own kind of dependency risk? I mean, what do the sources say about clinics needing some internal oversight, even with a vendor?
That's a critical question. And the sources are clear on this. While the CDO handles the process, the clinic is ultimately responsible for the data.
Oh, okay.
You have to have an internal system for tracking those license expiration dates and policy renewals because at the end of the day, if the CVO misses an update, the financial penalty, it falls on the clinic. It's a partnership. But data accountability stays internal.
Understood. Let's move on to step 3. And this is a point of confusion for a lot of people setting up a clinic, the difference between credentialing and enrollment.
They are completely separate, but they're inextricably linked. So credentialing is that internal verification of competence and qualifications we just talked about. Enrollment is the formal process of joining a specific insurer's network.
So, signing a contract with them.
Essentially, yes. It dictates the rates you can bill. You have to be successfully credentialed before you can even try to enroll. And you need both to see insured patients and actually get paid.
Okay, so the provider is now verified, they're clean, they're ready to go. How do you approach the payer submission process, especially with all the different insurers a practice needs to contract with?
This is where centralized data systems become your best friend. For the federal payers, CMS requires you to complete an online PCOS enrollment for Medicare.
PCOS.
PCOS, the Provider Enrollment, Chain, and Ownership System. It's the required application for any provider who wants to bill Medicare. It is complex, it is detailed, and it requires ongoing management.
And what about all the private insurers? Are you manually submitting that massive 30-document file to every single one?
Thankfully, no. This is where systems like CAQH come in.
TAQH.
The Council for Affordable Quality Healthcare. It runs a universal provider data system. Think of it like a central digital data bank or a standardized master resume for the whole healthcare industry.
So the CVO uploads all that verified data, the CV, licenses, NPCD report into this one system.
That's right. They manage it all in CAQH.
And then instead of sending 20 different forms, the CVO just tells each insurer, go look at the verified data in CAQH.
Exactly. The private insurers then pull the data they need from CAQH, which really streamlines the front end. But, and this is a big but, even with CAQH, each private health plan still has its own unique supplemental forms and contracting requirements.
So you're still doing custom applications?
You still have to send customized applications that cover your practice location, billing details, specific services offered, all of that, to become formally in-network with each payer.
This really just emphasizes the scale of this task. Even with these streamlined systems, you're still sending out tons of applications.
You are.
So let's talk about the timeline for the second stage, the enrollment phase itself.
And this is where you hit the second huge waiting period. Even after you submit a perfect application, the payer has to review it, approve it, and then load you into their payment systems. Medicare and Medicaid enrollment, that takes about 30 to 60 days.
Okay, that's not terrible.
But private insurers,
Mm,
they're notorious. Processing times can be anywhere between 90 and 180 days.
180 days after the initial data gathering and verification.
Yes, that is a massive operational challenge for any new clinic,
It creates a huge revenue gap.
a tremendous one. And this is why the CVO's role shifts here from just processing to, well, constant vigilance. They have to meticulously track every application, build lines of communication with payer enrollment departments, and make sure the clinic gets flagged the second that final approval comes through.
So the billing team can start submitting claims.
Immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and often retroactively to the data submission.
Now, before we move on to maintenance, let's just reiterate that one foundational step. The thing that has to happen before a provider can even appear in CAQH or PICOS.
You cannot start without your identifiers. The clinic must have its EIN, and every single provider must have their NPI. Those two numbers are the absolute building blocks for every single document, contract, and application. If you're opening a clinic, get those first.
Excellent point. Okay, now let's move past the initial setup because this is where a lot of new clinics fail. They treat credentialing as a one-and-done task.
It is not. It requires relentless, ongoing
The
maintenance.
compliance continuous loop.
That's it. And it's arguably the most financially critical part of this whole thing because failure here means you're paying money back.
How so?
Licenses, certifications, malpractice insurance, it all expires. If a claim gets submitted and paid while a provider's license was unknowingly lapsed, the payer will eventually flag it, deny that claim retroactively, and demand that money back.
And we could be talking about months or even years of claims being retroactively denied.
Yes, that can bankrupt a practice.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The financial consequences are severe. And on top of that, CMS has very strict rules about reporting material changes to the practice.
Things like a new address.
A change in physical address, ownership structure, a new tax ID. You have to report these within a very tight window, usually 30 to 90 days, or you face sanctions and even possible billing deactivation.
So the vendor's role here is basically compliance tracking. They're acting as the clinic's administrative calendar.
Precisely. A good CVO provides proactive compliance tracking. They're monitoring the expiration dates for all those documents for every provider on your panel. They alert the clinic way ahead of renewals, making sure the panel stays active and preventing those catastrophic, costly lapses.
Let's tie this back to the specialized clinic owner. Why does it matter if you choose a vendor who specializes in therapy, PT, OT, SLP versus just a general credentialing service?
It really comes down to expertise in the nuances. They understand the specific supervisor requirements for assistants and new grads, which change by state and by payer. They know which licenses are needed for certain modalities.
And that specialization leads to what?
Two core advantages. First, faster start and reduced errors. Because they already know the therapy landscape, they're not learning on your dime.
And the second advantage, which we haven't touched on enough, is the internal scalability for the clinic itself.
Yes, scalable support. Whether you're a solo practitioner bringing on your first assistant or a multi-site group hiring 5 new clinicians, a CVO gives you the infrastructure to manage that workload without the massive overhead of hiring a full-time dedicated credentialing manager. They handle the churn.
And finally, there's that critical safety net. What happens when the bureaucracy inevitably hits a snag? A missing form, a denied application.
That's where their follow-up support is so important. If a payer denies an application because of, say, an issue with a malpractice history or a missing attestation, the CVO is responsible for jumping in immediately. They supply the extra documents, they clarify the issue, they correct errors on the spot, instead of forcing a busy clinic owner into that bureaucratic mess.
So that's where it gets really interesting, right? The value proposition. The right vendor converts all those complex setup tasks, the paperwork, the verification, into a streamlined onboarding process that gets providers billing sooner.
It does. Minimizing that downtime really does mean maximizing your revenue potential. It moves you from just an administrative mindset to a strategic one.
Okay, so let's review the key phases we covered today. First, data gathering and paperwork prep. Second, primary source verification through systems like NPDB. Then, payer enrollment via systems like CAQH and PICOS. And finally, the one people forget, ongoing maintenance to protect your cash flow.
And timely, accurate submissions are the non-negotiable key to navigating that 1 to 6 month timeline.
And this knowledge is just so essential for your operational success.
It is, and as we discussed, you learned today that payer enrollment alone can take 90 to 180 days after your initial data is even verified. I mean, that delay is a financial reality. You can't just efficiency your way out of it.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider.
Since the paperwork directly dictates when your revenue starts flowing, and knowing you face this substantial 3 to 6 month gap before that first claim gets paid, how should a new clinic strategically structure its initial cash reserves, manage its leasing agreements, or allocate its early marketing budget to effectively bridge that operational gap?
Because the administrative details we talked about today, they're really the foundation for those huge strategic financial decisions.
That's the strategic layer,
An
exactly.
outstanding final thought. Thank you for taking this deep dive into credentialing with us. We really hope this knowledge helps you unlock your clinic's revenue potential faster and, of course, safer.
Until next time.